Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's October 28th. Today, we celebrate the Swiss botanist known as the father of geographical botany, and the American botanist who went on a 500-mile nature walk for her honeymoon. And just in time for Halloween, we'll learn about the botanist who followed in her father's footsteps to study slime mold. And we're coming up on the 200th anniversary of the botanist who climbed Pike's Peak and discovered the Blue Columbine, also known as the state flower of Colorado. We'll hear one of my favorite poems about October with the line, "The leaves by hundreds came," and we'll grow that garden library with a beautiful book from one of the country's top gardens, Philadelphia's Chanticleer. I'll give you some helpful tips to attract birds to your garden over the winter. And then we'll wrap things up with a Scottish garden that's also a living work of art. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch shared last week that the Missouri Botanical Garden is gearing up to break ground this January on a $92 million brand new visitor center. It'll be called the Jack C. Taylor Visitor Center in honor of the Taylor family who donated the lead gift for the project. Jack Crawford Taylor founded the Enterprise Rent-A-Car Company, and Taylor left a legacy of philanthropy. Taylor gave a $30 million gift to the Missouri Botanical Garden to fund global plant research, which is the largest gift ever given to a botanical garden in the United States. The new Jack C. Taylor Visitor Center is slated to open in the spring of 2022. And California's Department of Resources Recycling and Recovery, or CalRecycle, has a fantastic tradition of environmental stewardship. Last week, they put together a great video with tips on how to get started composting, and they shared it on their social media, and I shared it in the Facebook group for the show. Now, if you'd like to check out any of these curated articles for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group for the show, the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or track down links. Just head on over to the group the next time you're in Facebook. Look for the Daily Gardener Community in the search bar and request to join. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of the botanist Alphonse Pyramus de Cundel, who was born on this day in 1806, the year Linnaeus died. He was the son of the Swiss botanist Augustin Pyramus de Cundel. Cundel's groundbreaking book, Origin for Cultivated Plants, begins, "It is a common saying that the plants with which man has most to do and which has rendered him the greatest service are those which botanists know the least about." Cundel set about correcting that gap in understanding, which had persisted for 50 years. In 1885, the Glasgow Herald reminded readers, "At the commencement of the present century, but little was known respecting the origin of our cultivated plants." In 1807, Alexander von Humboldt said, "The first home of the plants most useful to man, and which have accompanied him from the remotest epochs, is a secret as impenetrable as the dwelling of all our domestic animals. We do not know what region produced spontaneously wheat, barley, oats, and rye. the plants which constitute the natural riches of all the inhabitants of the tropics, the banana, the pawpaw, and maize, have never been found in a wild state. The potato presents the same phenomenon. Kundal named growing regions, and he came up with climate classifications. Gardeners use them today when we refer to growing zones. This is why Kundal is known as the father of geographical botany. And Harvard botanist Asa Gray remarked, Kundal's great work closed one epoch in the history of the subject, and Sir Joseph Hooker's name is the first that appears in the ensuing one. Kundal devised the first code of botanical nomenclature. The International Code of Botanical Nomenclature is its descendant. These laws ensure that no two species of plants have the same name, and the botanical name is always in Latin. And today is the 175th birthday of the botanist Catherine Brandegee, who was born on this day in 1844. Brandegee was the third woman to enroll at Berkeley's medical school and the second woman to be professionally employed as a botanist in the United States. While getting her MD at Berkeley, Kate had learned that plants were the primary sources of medicine. Botany intrigued her, so she dropped the mantle of physician to pursue botany. 5 years later, she was the curator of the San Francisco Academy of Sciences herbarium. There, she personally trained Alice Eastwood, and when Kate moved on, Alice was ready to take her place. Kate was a phenomenal mentor. During her time at the Academy, in a surprise development at the age of 40, Kate had fallen, quote, insanely in love with the plantsman Townsend Brandegee. Equally yoked, their honeymoon was a 500-mile nature walk, collecting plant specimens from San Diego to San Francisco. In 1906, when an earthquake destroyed the Berkeley Herbarium, the Brandegees single-handedly restored it by giving the school their entire botanical library, including many rare volumes, and their plant collection, which numbered some 80,000 plants. Thanks to Townsend's inheritance, the couple was financially independent, but they were also exceptionally selfless. The Brandegees followed their plants and their books to Berkeley, where Townsend and Kate worked the rest of their lives pro bono. The botanist Marcus Jones said of Kate, she was the one botanist competent to publish a real book about the native plants of California. But Kate had delayed writing this work. She was 75 when she fell on the grounds of the university at Berkeley, and she broke her shoulder. And 3 weeks later, she died. And today is the birthday of the original queen of slime molds, Julie Elma Lister, who was born on this day in 1860. Julie Elma was born into a Quaker family in England, and her family and friends called her Julie. Her mom and dad were a classic match of opposites. Her mother was a right-brained creative, an artist, and her father was a left-brained scientist who was the world authority on slime mold. Julie studied at home and learned from both her parents. The Lister family home was called Sycamore House, and it was located on Leytonstone High Road. She spent her summers at the family summer house in Lyme Regis. Both houses just happened to be near nature areas rich with slime mold. Slime molds are pulsing giant amoebas that slowly move through soil or along the tree trunks, hunting for their food. Julie called them her creepies. Julie ended up shadowing her father, and she became very involved with his work. Together, Julie and her father prepared the world's primary study on slime mold. Drawing from the skills she learned from her mom, Julie painted many gorgeous watercolors of her slime mold specimens. When her father died in 1908, Julie was ready to fill his shoes as the world authority on slime mold. Over her lifetime, Julie helped found the British Mycological Society and served as its president twice in 1912 and 1932. And Julie was among the first women fellows of the Linnean Society. And today is the anniversary of the death of the botanist Edwin James, who died on this day in 1861. As a young man, James compiled the very first flora of Vermont plants. He went on one of the first expeditions of the American West from Pittsburgh to the Rocky Mountains. He discovered the mountain columbine, Aquilegia cerulea, which ultimately became known as the Colorado Blue Columbine and the state flower of Colorado. An account of James' climb of Pike's Peak, which happened almost 200 years ago on July 13, 1820, stated, "A little above the point where the timber disappears entirely, commences a region of astonishing beauty, covered with a carpet of low but brilliantly flowering alpine plants." James's phrasing, "a region of astonishing beauty," became the title of a 2003 book on the botanical history of the Rocky Mountains by Roger Lawrence Williams. After the expedition, James married and settled in Burlington, Iowa. His home was a stop on the Underground Railroad. James died in 1861 after an accident. There's a monument to James on Pike's Peak, and the Des Moines County Medical Society planted Rocky Mountain Blue Columbine on his grave in the Rock Spring Cemetery. Newspaper accounts said the location of Edwin James' grave was in the most picturesque part of southeastern Iowa. In unearthed words, here's a poem called October's Party from George Cooper, an American poet who's remembered for his happy song lyrics, which were often set to music written by Stephen Foster. Here's October's Party. October gave a party. The leaves by hundreds came, the chestnuts, oaks, and maples, and leaves of every name. The sunshine spread a carpet, and everything was grand. Miss Weather led the dancing, Professor Wind the band. We grow that garden library today with a book called The Art of Gardening by R. William Thomas and the Chanticleer Gardeners. This lovely book came out in 2015, and the subtitle is Design Inspiration and Innovative Planting Techniques from Chanticleer. Chanticleer is a 35-acre public garden outside of Philadelphia, and it's regarded as one of America's top gardens. Chanticleer has a staff of 6 gardeners, and each gardener is responsible for the design, planting, and maintenance of a section of the garden. Thus, the book was written by all of the different gardeners, and the gardener's executive director likes to say, Chanticleer is essentially a large demonstration garden. Our guests take away ideas on how to garden in their own home spaces. This is the perfect book for the off-season. It's a book that's loaded with beautiful photos and fantastic ideas that are great for planning next year's new landscaping projects. It's a wonderful book for browsing and dreaming and would make a lovely gift for the holidays. And I love what the executive director, R. William Thomas, says in the introduction about the value of walking through the garden. He wrote, "The son of the garden's founder, Adolph Rosengarten Jr., began each day with a walk around the garden, accompanied by his corgi. He greeted the staff, encouraged them to work hard, grabbed a snack at the apple house, and reviewed the property. I, too, begin each day with a walk around the garden with my corgi. It's much more than a lovely stroll. It's an inspection tour, a remembrance of what the property was, and most important, a meditation on what it can be. I stop frequently, looking both up close and into the distance. What does this part of the garden look like to a first-time guest? Is it as good as it can be? How will the area look in a month, in 3 months, a year, a decade? Could this bed be better? Is it time to try something new? Should this path be moved? Is that tree going to block the view in 20 years? Would a tower draw guests up the bulb meadow, the hill above the Asian woods? Can we illuminate steps to improve accessibility? Do all the garden areas hold together as one garden? Great questions and a great practice to follow in our own gardens. Here's today's garden chore. It's time to start planning food and feeders for winter birds. This is a great week to get your feeders ready to go before the holidays set in. One of the best tips I ever received from a fellow birder was to invest in a variety of feeders and foods. The diversity will draw a community of birds to your garden in the winter. Right as I'm putting away the Halloween decorations, I make a point to wash and set up my feeders. During the summer, I'm more focused on providing sources of water for the birds. But in the winter, I try to make sure my feeders are in spots I can get to, especially if I'm going to need to make a path to them with the snowblower. And a few other considerations would be to purchase a de-icer for your bird bath. I have a friend that likes to use a heated dog dish as a source of water instead of a bird bath, and I've used both, and either work great. And here's a final tip for you. My folks always save smaller dead trees and shrubs or brush to position near their feeders so that the birds have a nearby place to take cover. Evergreens, branches, and twigs provide needed shelter and protection. Finally, pat yourself on the back if you've incorporated berry-producing trees and shrubs like serviceberry, dogwood, and viburnum. you'll be rewarded with even more birds over the years, like the cedar waxwing, one of my favorites. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is the birthday of the Scottish poet, artist, and gardener Ian Hamilton Finlay, who was born on this day in 1925. Finlay created a one-of-a-kind garden that incorporated sculptures, words, architecture, and poetry. He named his garden Little Sparta, and the garden itself is considered a living piece of art. Finlay's poetry is incorporated into the art at Little Sparta. One especially poignant piece is a one-word poem with a very long title. It's a form of poetry that Finlay pioneered. In the garden, there's a small engraved plate that shares the long title, followed by a single word that makes up the poem. Here's what it says. One orange arm of the world's oldest windmill, autumn. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.